It's my great pleasure to invite to the stage from HSBC, our first speaker this afternoon, Malintha Fernando. Malintha is head of the digital experience and also accessibility, both the digital experience and accessibility. These two obviously are very closely linked together. So without further ado, I'll ask Malintha to come to the stage.
Perfect. Thanks, Mark. Good afternoon, guys. Look, it's fabulous to be here. For those of you who can't see me, I'm Marley. I'm wearing a rather interesting concoction of things this morning as I dress myself for my first physical event in some weeks. I'm a man in my 30s, an Asian man in my 30s, but for those of you who can see me, please tell me I look younger. It's so wonderful to be doing a physical event again. I think I did my first one a few months ago. And I turned up and I was speaking to some of our senior folk in our securities business, and it was great, it was going really well, and then I looked out and I realized that then moths had got into my suit. So the first thing I did this morning was to check that there were no holes in my trousers, so you'll be pleased to know there won't be any awkward moments, but of course I couldn't find my proper shoes, so apologies, I don't always dress like this. When Sophia from the 360 team reached out to me and said, look, Marley, we'd love for you to speak at this event, and we talked about some of the things that I could talk about. I said, look, we can talk about transformation. We could talk about innovation, whether it's artificial intelligence or the metaverse, which seems to be of keen interest to a lot of people today. For me, it was very clear what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about how technology can really change the lives of people who are both disabled and neurodiverse. And there's a very simple reason for that. Over 98% of the world's top websites are inaccessible. So what that means is that of our most important websites around the world, not just in banking, anywhere across the industry, the vast majority of them do not work for somebody who is either disabled or neurodiverse. So in the next few minutes, guys, I want to talk to you about three very simple things. The first is, what is digital accessibility? The second is why it's important to your organization. And thirdly, what are some of the things that you could do to change how it is you cater for the needs of either your customers or the public, and perhaps as importantly, your own people. So what I'd like to start with is a quick demonstration. I was due to have a co-speaker today. Unfortunately, he's got COVID, and hopefully our tech support is able to bring the video up. So I'm going to show you guys a recording of a gentleman called Adi Latif. He's blind, and he's going to show you how he uses the internet. Over to you guys.
In there, can I control the voice? Absolutely. And this is me playing it at quite a kind of slower than normal rate, so everyone can understand it. If it's the first time you're listening to a screen reader, it might still seem fast, but I will show you how I adjust the speed.
Borrowing, banking, close menu, button, open menu.
So this is the cool bit, right? When you turn on the screen reader, your interaction with the phone changes. You have to learn all these wonderful new gestures. So you know the flick left-right gesture I've just shown you. I'm going to show you another one. This is called the rota, and it's like turning an imaginary dial.
Links, form controls, links, headings. 0, speaking rate.
Okay, you heard speaking rate, and I'm going to do this vertical flip to adjust it.
55%,
So
60%.
I was on 60%. Someone like myself, or maybe Olu and other screen reader users, we might have it up here somewhere.
85%, 90%.
Like here, maybe.
Button, money on your It's good to talk. Take a look. Link, mobile banking, link. Check out some of the things you can do with banking from home. Find out current, discover the benefits of
But
banking.
I'll slow it down. I don't want anyone to feel anxious.
85%, 80%, 65%, 60%.
And keep that at 60. Also, I can navigate the page by other elements.
Headings.
Headings, for example.
Looking for help. Heading. Check your financial fitness score. Get protected. Heading.
And this is
level 2,
amazing
link.
because this is a very accessible page. All the code is right. When the code is right, the screen reader knows how to interact with the page. If these headings weren't marked up correctly, I wouldn't be able to jump around by headings. I'm going to quickly show you a demonstration now of a couple of apps.
Perfect. So hopefully that's giving you a little taster for what digital accessibility is. And without getting too technical, it's really simple. Digital accessibility is making something digital, be it a website, an app, a transactional platform, work for somebody who's either disabled or neurodiverse. So I'd like to start with why? Why is this important? And You can bring our slides up. Perfect. It's the right thing to do. It is unquestionably the right thing to do. Many of us in the organizations we work for or in our personal lives are dealing with questions around ethnicity, around gender, around LGBTQ, and if not today, at some point in the near future, around disability. You must build an organization today that answers the questions of tomorrow. In many parts of the world, it is a legal obligation to get this right. So we are bound legally to make sure that actually something is accessible. It's a legal requirement, and rightly so. And one of the interesting things that we've seen change is, while there's been legislation for long periods of time in places like the UK or the US, Canada, Australia, we're starting to see change in places like Asia and the Middle East. And with all of us living longer, this is only going to continue to grow in momentum. 1.2 billion people around the world identify as being disabled. So that's really, look, a really compelling argument. If you didn't buy into the first two things, and I hope you do, it's a very significant audience. So here in the UK, and that number's actually increased, it's roughly 13 million people. So that's about 1 in 5 people. And I want you to think about, as you build a product, a service, whether it's in technology or outside of technology, that's a fifth of potentially the audience that you're looking to cater or sell a product to, and also your own people in terms of recruitment, in terms of your employees, that you are leaving out. It's imperative that as organizations we get this right. Technology has the opportunity and the power to truly be a great enabler of inclusivity, but actually, if we don't get this right, we're going to disadvantage a lot of people around the world. That 1.2 billion, of course, translates into a significant financial opportunity. Here in the UK, the purple pound, as it's referred to, is worth 278 billion pounds every year, and the number's growing by 14% annually. Around the world, that's about $1.9 trillion globally. And one of the things we found working with both disabled customers, but also our staff who are customers, is that actually we find that disabled customers tend to be more loyal. They tend to be stickier, and the cost of acquisition obviously is lower. And of course, something that's digitally accessible doesn't just benefit somebody who's disabled, it benefits all of us. So, what should you do? So there are a couple of things, guys, that I'd like to leave you with. And as you start your journey in digital accessibility, some of you might be mature, and for some of you, seeing somebody who's blind use a website, this might be the first time you've seen it. But that's fine. I don't think there's any organization that's perfect. At HSBC, we're very proud of what we've achieved, but we recognize we have a lot more to do. So what are some of the simple things that you should be doing as an organization? Give everyone a seat at the table. There's no substitute for having disabled and neurodiverse users be part of your design and delivery process. Bring them in right, nice and early. Make sure your brand standards, your design standards, your digital standards, your communication standards have all catered for the needs of the many and not the few. You should really have a representative participant group, right? So look, if you're thinking about recruitment and you're thinking about actually how do I bring in the right segment or proportion of customers in this space or users, make sure you have a truly representative group of users. One of the things that I learned, which is quite interesting, is the reading age of some of the communication that we in HSBC produce. So the reading age we found of some of the content that we produce was of 17 to 18. But the reading age in the UK on average is somewhere between 10 to 12. So what that meant is that actually we were speaking to the public, to our customers in a manner that was far too complicated. And not only did it benefit some of our neurodiverse customers and members of the public, but it benefited everybody. I don't think anybody's ever said to me, can you please speak to me in a more complicated manner? If that's you, great, but it's not something I hear very often. The other thing that's really important, guys, is take that feedback seriously, right? A lot of organizations will bring disabled and neurodiverse customers in, and sometimes they ignore that feedback. But take it into account. Work with your digital teams, your product managers, or parts of your organization to really incorporate that into providing a better service. Knowledge. Knowledge really is power in this space, and so is awareness, right? You know, we can never do enough awareness. I think last year was a bit of a banner year for us in terms of events. I think I personally did somewhere between 50 to 75 events with about 15,000 people, primarily our own people, but about a third of that were you know, our external partners. It is as much a technology change as it is a cultural change, or rather a cultural change as it is a technology change. As I say, look, if you change people's hearts and minds, the ones and zeros will follow. Create a training program for not just your devs, but also all parts of your organization, your folk in brand, your legal folk, your procurement teams, because really, actually, there's a very specific ask of each of your team members within your organization. Think about your own people, right? You know, in this day and age, I think organizations are clamoring to provide the best customer experience. How do we win customers? How do we retain customers? But actually, inclusivity starts from within. So if you aren't taking care of your own people, you aren't really going to have the right culture such that actually inclusivity is about to flourish. So one of the interesting things that we did when we started looking at staff accessibility and making our internal systems accessible was that in the UK alone, if we gave our disabled and neurodiverse staff an extra hour of productivity by making all our systems accessible, we'd have a commercial upside in the region of $50 million. It's not bad, is it? It's quite significant, right? $50 million every year in increased productivity. That doesn't talk about, you know, all the stuff that it does in terms of a better team dynamic, all the research around a better sales organization, the fact that actually you're going to retain staff, a sense of pride of working for an organization that's truly inclusive. There's really no joy, guys, like, you know, coming across a member of your team and hearing about what your work has done to allow them to come in and simply be themselves in the workplace, and allowing somebody to mature and grow within an organization. And your technology is a great enabler as opposed to being a barrier. Strong foundations. Look, I've talked a little bit about making sure that the foundations of your organization are right, whether it's your standards, your technology choices, but also start thinking about how physical meets digital. So one of the cool things we're doing is we're having a little play around with innovation. So one of the things we're piloting in some of our branches, as well as our larger headquarters around the world, is the use of Lidar. Some of you might be familiar with Lidar. Effectively, in really simple terms, what we do is we're using a certain frequency of radio waves to map out a physical space. So how does that actually play out? Well, think about that blind graduate who's so excited to start working for your organization, right? They come into HSBC in Canary Wharf. You get to the front doors, maybe Google Maps has got you there, and then you're confronted with a 42-story building that has about 15,000 people. And all of a sudden, you've got to stick your arm out and hope the guy from security or the reception is able to take you to level 15, room 3. Actually, what we're allowing those individuals to do is actually navigate a physical space independently. And last but not least, look, ask for help. Ask for help, right? Nobody's perfect. We work with, you know, some of the largest tech companies around the world, brands that we're all familiar with, and nobody is perfect. If you and your organization are hearing about digital accessibility for the first time, my offer to all of you is reach out. We'd be very happy to help. I appreciate that large organizations historically have been considered too big to care. But at HSBC, we recognize that we're big enough to make a difference. So if you'd like to start your journey on digital accessibility, please reach out. We will train up your people at no cost to you. There's nothing that we want in return. If you want to learn, reach out. I've got some of the best technologies anywhere in the world, and we'd be delighted to help you. If you're already doing this, great. Continue doing it. and share your knowledge, give it away freely. If you're a salesperson, please don't call me. I get enough of that, except if you're Sophia, because look, I'd love to obviously speak at some of your events in the future. I've spoken a little bit longer than I meant to, so I'm going to stop and take questions from the audience if there are any.
So as promised, this is your opportunity to ask questions to Mali. So please do raise your hands and we'll bring a microphone to you. I see one at the back there. Please introduce yourself and the organization you're from so that Mali knows where the direction the question is coming from. And I've also got some online as well, so do raise them.
Simon Gilson, Fox Visa. Mali, great speech, talk, whatever you want to call it. This is an enormous subject. In terms of prioritization, where did you start?
Good question. I started with awareness, I remember some of the early conversations when, I founded this program at HSBC was, Mali, how can somebody who's blind use a smartphone? That doesn't seem to make sense. Do we have to do this? It's not a legal obligation here in Asia, so actually, do we have to cater for this? So actually, we started with awareness. And then we moved on to making our core systems accessible, our core public websites, our core mobile apps, our core transactional platforms. Because look, when you strip away the sort of technical terms, what are we talking about here? We're talking about financial independence. And look, I'd like for all of you to imagine for a second what it's like to not have the ability to control your finances and how vulnerable you will feel if you can't decide how it is you spend your money, the ability to make a payment, the ability to check a website and do many of the things that many of us simply take for granted. That sense of vulnerability is really palpable. So we started with awareness, and then we moved on to the things that had the most amount of impact in terms of users. And now we're quite literally changing the entire organization.
Mali, one of the questions we got from the online audience is, what are some of the big challenges you faced?
Good, very good. Culture. Culture is really interesting, right? You think that actually, not just within HSBC, but also externally, right? You think that actually doing the right thing by somebody who's disabled or somebody who's neurodiverse is an easy one, right? You just that's a no-brainer. Why would anybody question that? But actually, change the culture was arguably one of our biggest challenges. The second was some of our third-party relationships, right? So really big technology companies, companies that you would expect to get this right, when we started looking under the hood of their systems, when we bought a product, when we bought a service, we found that actually they weren't accessible. So, that was perhaps another challenge which we're working through. And third was knowledge. Look, this is a really niche part of technology. And one of the things we're doing, guys, is we're giving away our knowledge away for free. Look, please take me up on my offer. But we're also working with universities to start building this into IT curriculums and degrees, such that actually the developers of tomorrow already understand how to cater for the disabled and neurodiverse. So if there were three sort of challenges, I'd say culture, organizations that are less within your control, third parties, and then thirdly, knowledge.
Well, that's some great advice. I see we've got another question at the back here.
Thanks for the inspirational conversation. I will never look at my mobile app in the same way. I think one question I have is, do you think this perspective on accessibility should drive simplification of banking products? I'm just thinking about, for example, mortgages. Sometimes it's a quite overwhelming and painful process. So do you think there's a feedback loop?
Beautiful question. So, absolutely, right? Simple answer is absolutely, right? When we think about sort of in the retail space, what are our most complicated products? Mortgages are probably amongst the top, perhaps in competition with some of our wealth management products. And actually, if you can make the mortgage process simple for somebody who's neurodiverse, for example, I will bet Sophia's salary that chances are it will benefit every one of your customers, right? One of the things that last week I was speaking at an event for Tata Consultancies, and we started looking at the intersection between disability and gender, right? We know in the developing world there's a huge gulf between male and female education, right? It's more pronounced in some parts of the world than it is in others. So what does it actually mean when you're building a website or an app? Actually, it's great to talk about great design, great UX, but actually we need to go back, actually using things like imagery, because actually using words sometimes for somebody who may not be literate wouldn't actually work. So, simpler is better, not just for somebody who's disabled or neurodiverse. I think it benefits us all.
Mali, it's great to hear the transformation going on within HSBC. What are you proud of? What's brought you enjoyment as part of that, and satisfaction as part of that transformation?
It's making a real difference, right? Making a real difference, right?
And what are people telling you?
One of the first things that piece of feedback I got when we made our first online banking platform accessible was really powerful. It had been quite a journey. It had been quite difficult. And we had a customer write to us and said, for the first time, my wife, who is blind, can use her online banking without my help. Kudos HSBC. We will be customers for life.
Could be expensive.
Could be expensive, but look, there's no joy like acting in service of other people. And speaking on behalf of those of our customers or members of the public who don't have a voice is truly the greatest part of my career.
Well, that's been a great talk and a very worthy cause, and I hope people take you up on your offer, because everyone will benefit. Please can I ask you to put your hands together to thank Mali from HSBC for that great talk.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.